Damian Lillard has finally requested a trade from the Portland Trail Blazers. James Harden is done with Philadelphia and has also requested a trade. Big money contracts are getting handed out left and right to everybody, and all of this means that we are really in the depths of the offseason, and with so much crazy stuff going on, we have to talk about it. It's only right that we start off with the biggest news of the offseason so far, and that's Damian Lillard. After a long 11 years of playing for the Portland Trail Blazers, Damian Lillard has finally decided to request a trade from the Portland Trail Blazers. According to all the reporting we've gotten so far, it appears that Lillard's list is very short. He wants to go to Miami. I gotta say, a trio of Lillard, Jimmy, and Bam will be extremely formidable, and I'd argue they'd probably be the best team in the East depending on what they lose depth-wise in this trade. Of all the games Dame has played in the NBA, I would say this automatically puts him with the best group he's ever played with. The Blazers have struggled significantly over the last couple of seasons, going 60-104 since the beginning of the 21-22 season. After multiple failed attempts of trying to field a competitive roster centered around Lillard in Portland, the front office just simply couldn't get the job done, which was the main reason why these trade rumors have started kicking up over the last couple of seasons. I think at this point, it's for the best of both parties in this situation. Damian Lillard is arguably the best Blazer to ever wear the jersey, and has been one of the league's top talents over the last decade, and he deserves a fair crack at winning a championship before he's completely over the hill, and the Blazers get to restart around a promising young guard in Scoot Henderson. You can give him all the flack you want about the loyalty shtick, but you have to give him some credit. I think most players in today's NBA would not have lasted as long as Damian Lillard. They would have bounced from that situation a couple years back. And I think this is a big reason why no one's going to hold this trade request against Damian Lillard. The really weird part about the situation was that maybe even like an hour before Dame officially requested a trade, the Blazers decided to sign Jeremy Grant to a 5-year, $160 million contract. It was reported also after the trade request that Portland was still planning on going through with the contract offer for Jeremy. And to be honest, them going through with this contract still just goes to show that this Portland front office group just does not have any competence when it comes to building the proper team around a guy like Damian Lillard so he can go compete for an actual championship out in the West. But at the end of the day, shout out to Jeremy Grant. He's a solid player, and now he's got that generational wealth. Moving from the Northwest to the East Coast, James Harden has also decided to opt for a trade request. James decided to pick up his player option for the final year of his contract, and he officially requested a trade from the Philadelphia 76ers. I gotta say, Philly was stuck in a really tough situation. I'm gonna speak a bit as a fan here, so don't mind me. Harden was absolutely incredible in Game 1 and Game 4 against the Boston Celtics. You really can't say anything bad about those two games. You could argue they're two of the best games of Harden's entire playoff career. He was a major reason why the Sixers even won 2 of the 3 games they won in that second round series against the Celtics. But on the flip side, something no one's really talking about is the floor of James Harden's performance. The ceiling is great, man. When the step back threes are hitting, he's hitting the pull-up midi, he's getting to the foul line, everything is real sweet. But when he doesn't have it going on, it's bad, dude. Harden shot below 30% from the field in 6 out of the 11 playoff games that he played for Philly this past postseason. Harden's also about to be 34 years old, so naturally, after some poor play, injury concerns, and some old age, it's going to make you hesitant on wanting to give him a long-term deal with big money. Harden wasn't going for it. He wasn't happy with the contract negotiations they had this offseason, especially after last year when Harden took a pay cut with his original 1+1 deal to allow the Sixers to bring in some extra depth to help them gear up for a championship run. Because of all of these swirling factors, Harden feels like he's being disrespected. Philly's not willing, or at least hesitant, to go all the way with the money in the years from Harden, and now here we are. There hasn't been a lot of new reporting since the day of his trade request, but what we learned is that he wants to be traded to the Clippers to play with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. There's also teams like New York and Chicago that are interested in bidding for Harden's services. And I gotta be honest, man, it really just sucks for Philly. You can't help but feel bad for Joel a little bit. No one told him to go out and play as bad as he did. in the end of that Game 6 and the entirety of Game 7 in that second round series. But this guy has played with damn near a brand new team every single season. And when you look at a team like Denver, who's had legitimate continuity for, who knows, the past 5-6 years now, you never really get to build continuity with your team when there's constantly pieces getting shuffled around. It's really hard to do that. I have no idea what Philly's going to get back for Harden this offseason. But if anything, we know that Daryl Morey is more than willing to wait and play the waiting game, because last year, or excuse me, 2 years ago, when Ben Simmons requested his trade in the summertime, he didn't get moved until the deadline. Now, their situations are a little bit different. Harden's older. He's at the end of his career, so he wants to play. He's not going to sit out, but we've seen in the past that Harden's willing to sandbag. So it's going to be a little bit of a staring contest until that package that Daryl really likes comes available. And hopefully, for Philly's sake, they net some pieces, man, because with Lillard going to Miami, it's hard to see a path for contention for Philly when they got teams like Miami, Boston, and Milwaukee all ready to go at it once again next year. And then last but not least, what the hell are the Houston Rockets even doing? Houston has decided to accelerate the team's rebuild after 3 horrible years. 59 wins over the last 3 seasons, including 177 losses. Their path to accelerating the rebuild, they decided to hire Ime Udoka, who is a good coaching hire, but with some questionable stuff in Boston and his exit. We don't really know what he's like as a person, but he seems to be well regarded as a coach from the Boston players. They also decided to sign Fred VanVleet to a massive 3-year, $128.5 million deal. I must say, it was later reported that the 3rd year of this contract is a team option, so it's not as bad as it seemed on day one. I'm still not crazy about him as a player or prospect, but regardless, he is now the 6th highest paid point guard in the NBA, ahead of guys like Kyrie Irving, Ja Morant, Darius Garland, Jamal Murray, and plenty of other guys. They also decided to throw $80 million to Dillon Brooks over 4 seasons after he had an embarrassing individual postseason. I didn't really understand that because I'm not exactly sure who else was really willing to bid for those services. But I guess in Houston's shoes, you kind of have to overpay to get guys to come. But I mean, Dillon, I think, can provide a good example. I mean, he is a great defender. You can't take that away from him. But, man, his exit from Memphis and all the stuff in the playoffs, it was, in my opinion, it was just a total clown show. Then they also added Jeff Green and Jock Landale as some vets to help bolster the depth, which I think are fine signings. And then also in the midst of all this, the way they acquired Dillon Brooks, it's all becoming a weird sign and trade. So Houston had traded for Patty Mills, but now apparently Patty Mills is going to be rerouted from Houston into this big potential 4 or 5 team trade. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to be finalized, but what we do know for Houston is that they have Fred, they have Dillon Brooks, they signed Jeff Green, and they signed Jock Landale. Now, with all that being said, I'm all about accelerating a rebuild, but I'm not exactly sure how this collection of players is the time you decide to push all the chips in. The Rockets very clearly have a lot of young talent that could use some veteran presence, but also adding Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore in the draft this year, which I think they nailed. I'm fairly curious to see how the lineups are going to shake out now. You're going to have Fred VanVleet obviously starting at the point guard because you didn't give him $40 million to come off the bench. You're going to have Alperen Sengun at the 5, which I think is great for him. And then you have 4 young players who all should be in consideration to start between Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and Amen Thompson. I would imagine you didn't just give Dillon Brooks $80 million to come off the bench. So then that leaves only 2 spots between Jabari, Kevin, Jalen, and Amen. So really, I just don't even know what to expect with this squad moving forward. I would imagine the Rockets aren't quite done yet this offseason. We know they have that kind of weird trade that needs to be finalized over the next week or whatever. I also fully expect Kevin Porter Jr. to be dealt at some point this offseason because of the gluttony they have in the backcourt. Someone's got to go. I think the best case scenario for Houston is that the addition of some veterans and a new coaching staff will instill some good habits and stability for the young guys. But I have a hard time envisioning Houston not being one of the worst teams in the league again next season. The Western Conference is an absolute bloodbath, and really, I don't even see Houston sniffing the play-in game next year. With all of the player movement we've had this season, and now we're getting all this in the offseason, it's truly making up to be a crazy calendar year for the NBA. We've had Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Chris Paul, Rudy Gobert, Kyrie Irving, now potentially James Harden and Damian Lillard. All these guys changing teams within one calendar year, to me, is absolutely wild. And if you guys want to keep getting updates on all the wild stuff that's going on, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. We're going to be talking about all of it right here on this channel moving forward.